Once upon a time, in a universe far, far away, there was a Time Lord named the Doctor. He was a Time Lord unlike any other, for he believed that Time Lords should not interfere with the timelines. Time Lords like he were known as the non-interventionists. Quaint beginnings with huge ramifications. One such ramification was the death of a Lord Burner named Brexietel. Brexietel was the brother of the Doctor, a brother he would later kill after Brexietel tried to burn the Doctor out of existence. But the shame of killing his own blood did not deter the Doctor. It pushed him further. The Doctor travelled the stars trying to correct the damage done by his universe's Time Lords. Now, for the little species, what is a Lord Burner, you ask? The Lord Burner is a temporal assassin for the Gallifreyan president. They burn people from history itself. The Doctor was taken in by the Time Lords and agreed to be the president's new Lord Burner, ditching all of his previous beliefs. For instead of wanting to travel the universe to undo the damage done by Gallifrey, now the Doctor was the president's trained dog, a role that fittingly brought him back to his first victim. For you see, some things are simply inevitable. The Doctor met an alternate version of his long-lost brother, just in time for both of them to fall into the Axis, death awaiting them. Until Brexietel was saved, and until now, Lord Burner wasn't so lucky. And now they are nothing more but pawns in my game. Let the story go on.
This is a recorded message from the TARDIS computer banks.
You've entered the room of memories. I am the Doctor.
I'm the Doctor.
I'm the Doctor.
I'm the Doctor.
I'm the Doctor. I'm the Doctor. I'm the Doctor.
I'm the Doctor.
I have lived thousands and thousands of years and faced deadly adversaries. I've had 14 faces, past, present and future.
But 14 is not all.
There are more than I know. More Doctors. More than I will ever be able to count. But the real question still stands.
Doctor Who?
Lord Burner fell endlessly through the void, cursing the name of his idiot brother Brexietel. He'd thrown the both of them off the Axis in some pointless heroic sacrifice. Brexietel had gotten lucky in the first few minutes and tumbled off into some universe or another. But Lord Burner wasn't blessed by Lady Luck in the same way. He tumbled endlessly through the swirling void for days. The days turned into weeks, which unfolded into months, perhaps years. A Time Lord such as himself didn't need to eat or sleep, but time still took its toll on him. The days in the void wore away at him, both his body and his mind, and as he fell, he began to die. He would regenerate, of course, but he didn't know how the weird, swirling energies that surrounded him would interfere with his new body. Eventually, when his hearts were on the verge of giving out, he finally got lucky, falling through a little crack in space and time and slipping through into another universe. His body hit the pavement of some distant world with a rather undignified slam, and he fell into a deep sleep. When he awoke, his body still aching from the impact, there was a man standing over him. His robes were the same as Burner's, but his frame was much skinnier. His face was gaunt and commanding, and in his left hand he held a sleek staser pointed at Burner's head. "Who on earth are you?" Lord Burner was rather irritable today, as he wasn't used to waking up face down on some dirty pavement. "You don't remember me, Doctor? The valeyard? Your own worst enemy?" He almost sounded hurt. Lord Burner was about to open his mouth and explain that it was a case of mistaken identity, that he was a far superior doctor from another reality, and that he'd be on his way, and that he wished this tall stranger all the best with his strange rivalry. But the man calling himself the valeyard spoke over him before he could get the words out. "Shut up! Get on your feet!" He waved the staser in Lord Burner's face with such a heavy determination that Burner was struck by the thought that perhaps it would be a good idea to listen. Besides, he was far too exhausted to try and fight him. On his own Gallifrey, Lord Burner would have wiped this man from the face of history like condensation off a cold window, but here he was rather more powerless. As he stood up, he was finally able to see his surroundings properly. It was an empty street, old and broken. It had clearly been abandoned for years as grass and weeds grew up through the cracks in the concrete, flecking the gray road with spots of green. The whitewashed buildings had huge flakes of paint peeling off, areas of brick exposed where they had once been. A tall building stood on one side of the road. It reminded Burner of the dull office blocks he'd seen on Earth back when he was inclined to travel. It used to be a hotel, from what Burner could gather from the shape of the entrance and the rows of the palm trees that had long outgrown their pots. It looked as if it had been quite the attraction in its day. It had half a gaudy neon sign on the roof, with the other half having fell and smashed on the pavement many moons ago. Looking at the roof of the hotel, Burner's eyes locked onto a strange shape hanging in the sky. He couldn't really make it out, and the longer he stared at it, the less he could perceive it, like when you look directly at a star in the night and it seems to fade away. But he knew it was there, some malignant presence in the sky. He felt it deep in his bones. His hearts told him that it was true. "What is this place?" He almost spat the words out at the valeyard. "All in good time, Doctor. Now, if you'll kindly follow me." The valeyard turned and walked into the ruined hotel. Burner obligingly followed. They went into the lobby, which was even more overgrown than the entrance. Potted plants that had long since decided that they were destined for more than simply being a decoration grew all over the lobby. Burner felt they looked like they had simply become a part of it. In a way, he supposed it was beautiful, the plants taking back what was rightfully theirs. He followed the valeyard up a stairwell, which seemed to stretch on forever. Unlike the lobby, the stairwell seemed to have never looked expensive in the first place. It was all bare concrete and whitewashed walls, nothing like the mahogany walls and crimson carpets of the lobby. This must have used to be the employees' stairwell, neatly tucked away where no one could find it. That way, the rich guests of the hotel, they must have been rich, this place was far too upmarket to say otherwise, wouldn't see the underside of what they'd paid for. They didn't have to know its inner workings. The people who came here must be looking, then, for escapism, he decided, something frivolous. It was funny what you could figure out from the interior design of a building. Eventually, the two of them came into the penthouse suite. It was similarly destroyed. At this point, Burner would have given anything for a room that was well put together. The far end of the room had no wall at all, but a huge window that looked out onto the rest of the city. It was sprawling. It went on and on as far as the eye could see. That was strange. Ordinary Earth cities didn't go on for that far. Even stranger were the buildings that dotted the city. From here he could see the Eiffel Tower, the pyramids of Giza, and the London Eye. "May I please ask where we are?" Burner wasn't used to being overly polite, but he decided that today it was probably a good idea to not irritate the man holding the staser. "Well, since you asked so nicely." He sat down into a worn leather armchair and gestured for Burner to sit down in the one opposite. "The planet was an Earth colony. It's long since been abandoned, but you knew that already. Humans have a tendency to drink and gamble, you'll have noticed. Wherever they end up in the universe, no matter how technologically advanced they become, they always end up with a sleazy part of town, as they so eloquently put it. and none is so famous to the humans as the legend of Las Vegas, one of the cities of Old Earth, a mecca for gamblers. So, humans being the wretched creatures that they are, a colony decided to rebuild the ancient city here, only bigger and brighter, so much so that they had to terraform the entire planet to fit their whims. Welcome to the Lotus Hotel and Casino on the planet Vegas, Doctor. It shall be your final resting place. It wasn't a satisfactory answer for Burner. And why, pray tell, is it abandoned? The valeyard laughed. I was hoping you'd ask that. He reached into his robes and reached out a sonic screwdriver. Oddly, it was similar to the ones that Burner used to carry as a child. The valeyard pointed it skyward and pressed the button, and the holographic blue sky vanished. In its place was a darker sky, filled with stars and debris, and a huge object at its center. A black hole. I see. The valeyard put the sonic away. Now, Doctor. Burner interrupted him before he could say anything. Ah, yes, that's a little misconception I'd like to clear up. I am not the Doctor. Well, I am, but from a different universe. I promise you, any trouble you have with the Doctor from this universe is nothing to do with me. Now, if you'll let me, I'll be on my way. No. What? You are not leaving. You may not be the Doctor I know, but you'll do just fine. Excuse me? The valeyard sighed. I suppose I should introduce myself. I'm the Doctor as well, or rather, an aspect of his. Part of him. The trouble is, I'm out of regenerations. I need more. So I tracked the biosignal of the Doctor here, and found you. And how many regenerations do you have left? 7. He nodded thoughtfully. Perfect. Without warning, he leapt out of his chair and lunged at Burner. His gloved hand curled around his throat, and Burner could feel his regenerations leaving his body. It wasn't a rush or a burning sensation. It just felt like a loss, like having your soul cut out with a surgeon's knife. Like a void inside him was growing and eating him away until there would be nothing left of him at all. Like numbness. The valeyard, on the other hand, was beginning to regenerate. The moment he pulled his hand away, it began to look softer, more youthful. A yellow glow began to emit from his fingertips, which spread to his palms, then his arms, then his neck, and all through his body. All at once the regeneration started. The explosion of fire and light burned the air, and the valeyard's old, stern face softened. His hair grew darker and longer, and his eyes became more youthful. He fell to the ground, and Burner realized he had regenerated into a woman. Burner didn't want to waste the opportunity he'd been given. Hoping the girl collapsed on the floor would be too busy with the post-regeneration amnesia, he got up and made a break for the door. Hopefully in the city there'd be an abandoned spaceship left behind with enough fuel in it to get him off the planet before it fell into the black hole. Before he could properly make a plan, he felt a searing pain in between his shoulder blades. He collapsed to the floor. Standing over him was the valeyard, holding her staser in her left hand. Sorry, I couldn't resist the opportunity to kill the Doctor, even if it was a different one than I'm used to. Burner tried to say something, but the words stuck in his throat. Don't try to speak. You don't have the strength left anymore. The blast will kill you, but slowly. You have about a day before your hearts give out. Coincidentally, you also have about a day before Vegas gets crunched up by that black hole up there. She giggled gleefully. I wonder what'll kill you first. Unfortunately, I won't be around to find out. Ta! She stepped into her TARDIS, which had stood in the corner of the room, disguised as a chest of drawers. And so it was there, lying on the floor of the Lotus Hotel and Casino's penthouse suite, that Lord Burner finally died. He'd taken so many lives himself, destroyed them, erased them from ever existing. It was sort of poetic that he killed himself before he could ever make his mark on this new universe. At least he had stars. A whole new set of stars that he'd never seen before. When he was younger, he'd have been flying off to see them. meet new friends, and fight evil aliens. He'd lived in a simple world back then, where good people were good and bad people were bad, and you always came out on top if you just had faith. He'd never been able to find out the truth, that life wasn't that easy. Maybe that was a blessing. God, what had happened to that hopeful little boy who'd wanted to leave Gallifrey with Susan to see the rest of the universe? He'd been stifled, that's what. Dragged back down from the sky and made to stay on Gallifrey to do the President's will. It was pathetic. But the stars were there in his final moments. He looked out through the long glass window and watched them as he died.